And welcome back to WAAAGH Tactics. And today we're going to talk about the upcoming Pariah Nexus. And some of my takeaways, I'll be directly talking about the missions, the rule missions, and maybe fixed or tactical missions. Give some of my closing thoughts, questions and concerns I'd like to be brought up, and things for us to all keep in mind. Of course, this is just the first analysis, as we still have to see the points, and points greatly impact what units will be used for scoring these secondaries, our possible predators, and the meta archetype as a whole. So, boys, let's talk about Pariah Nexus. Now, Pariah Nexus has a bunch of changes in mind for us, and I think it's actually a good thing for the most part. Things were getting a little stale, and for the most, we can see that the game is very, very balanced right now. So, in the balanced state of where it is, introducing this into the game should actually change things up in a healthy manner. I do want to directly say that I think this might help uppy downy kind of shenanigan-y quick moving armies, but we don't know if that's necessarily going to be a bad thing. So let's get some lessons in, boys. So let's start with some interesting primary mission changes. I didn't include every single one because that was kind of boring, but I did include ones I wanted to talk about. So let's start with, first off, Purge the Foe. Purge the Foe is now unable to get scoring of kill more for +4 VP in turn 1. I think that's a huge deal for something like Commandos or Orks as a whole. We hate that when we have to go first, even that we would directly give up Purge the Foe a lot of the time because we would end up open going for an objective if you're a new Ork player or if you're trying to stage your trucks. Any kind of our infiltrators being quite expensive for Commandos, or Zagrot being a scouter being quite cheap and it's kind of relatively soft, meaning that we would hate to give this up. And now that it's not doubling down on that, giving up plus additional 4 points, we really like that. So keep Mandos in mind. I'd love for them to still come down in points. We have yet to see that. Burden of Trust, a new sort of mission. It says the interesting part is end of the command phase, objectives under the control are 4 VP. But once you guard it, you get an additional +2 VP. So if it's under your control, you just have it. Let's say your boys are there, they get shot off, you still get your 4 victory points. But in order to actually guard it for the burden of trust, you need something to survive until your next turn, the end of the enemy player's battle round. That means for something like this, I'm really considering the Big Mech and Mega Armor. He becomes more viable in this way. Of course, keep in mind, you're not able to do actions when you are in combat anymore and things like that. I'm sure you've seen from a bunch of different videos, but Big Mech and Mega Armor kind of starts to shine a little bit more in that way, as he's one of the few units in an Ork collection that can simply stand in an objective and make it actually guarded. So it gives him a bit more utility. I really like to see that, as the Big Mech was kind of becoming unfavored in comparison to War Boss or Gaz, especially when we see these points increases. I'm assuming the War Boss and Mega Armor is going to be directly increased in points. I don't think the Big Mac will. Therefore, if there's this comparison and you have to consider this burden of trust mission rule, you must now consider the Big Mac a little bit more. So, linchpin, scoring less primary if you do not control your home objective. If you decide you're just going to run off it for other armies like a World Eater army, well, us as Ork players, we don't really have that problem, as we tend to like to leave our grots at our home field so we can score our victory points, which is even more beneficial now that it's in the command phase. The movement phase, not the command phase. So this is going to be good for us as we continue to talk about those, how the impact changes. But the reason why I put weird boy question mark here is for something like a Green Tide, where you can throw that additional enhancements on the weird boy and actually go for an enemy's home field objective, meaning you can really decimate those really elite armies if you can get on their home field objectives. It's not easy, easier said than done. So many shenanigan armies in the meta now, like Grey Knights and Necrons and Eldar, people tend to have infiltrators and really screen their home field and their backfields. A lot of players are a bit more inclined to doing that. So I do think linchpin is not going to be really impactful, especially for us as Ork players. Then the Ritual. The Ritual is one of my not favorite missions, even though it's somewhat fun to play, like if you're playing another melee army. Yeah, it's really good for these castling armies. So they've changed it to where it's 12 inches away from one other objective. Still good for those castling armies. What I really hate to see in this mission, we'll say, I like to use Tyranids as the example, though they will have to face their own changes now. Tyranids one of those armies that when you would play them on the Ritual, they would directly be able to screen you with something like gargoyles, and then they would make their objectives in the middle. You as an Ork player would say, hey, how we like to play is we like to get ahead on primary, really take control of the middle of the table, bury you on our primary points, and then at the tail end of the game, as you're trying to make up for it, we've killed too many of you where you can't retain the primary, hopefully not scored enough secondary, and we've continued to score secondaries. In the ritual, a lot of the time, these armies that would sit in corners, they could, like I said, Tyranids, they could go out, shoot spore mines, core their secondary, make the ritual objectives near them, and then just castle up, right? So it's not really good when you see like an Ironstorm army and stuff like that. We do have to see if there's going to be maybe terrain changes, right? And we do know that the objective deployment zones have changed now. They're a bit closer to each other. So there's a bit ways to offset this now, right? But these are things to keep in mind. Then we have Scorch Earth. The one major change here is at the end of turn 5, you have the ability to burn down the objective, and you weren't able to do that before. Again, I include the Weird Boy because if you can get to the enemy home field objective, you could burn it down at the end of the game and get that nice fat 10. Overall, this is a very chill draw type of mission, not too much going on here. Even though it sounds like something Orks would want to do, you don't necessarily scorch the objectives unless you know you're about to lose them. And even in some of those cases, if you could sticky them with boys, which I think battle line is going to be a little bit more important now, and we like our boy truck transports, it's not always viable for us as Ork players, but just keep in mind on how it works. And it could be an option, but let's see the future, right? Then we have supply drop unchanged. This is the one where there's the alpha omega you roll off. What I like to say is this one sucks for natural expansion luck, right? If you have an objective marker that is closer to you, but is the first one to burn and go away, then you've lost the natural advantage of the natural expansion. Therefore, the enemy player kind of gets that objective. It doesn't feel good. Don't really love supply drop. For Orks, we're really just like, hey, we're going to run at you and try to kill you. This is a little bully boys-ish, right? Really likes to see this one. Green Tide used to like to see this one because they can just kind of swarm the objective if they need to and jump over there. But with all the changes we've seen with all these secondaries, as we're going to talk about in a little bit, things aren't going to be so easy for heavily elite armies or people that are kind of slow, right? Then we have Terraform. Terraform is one of those new missions, right? 4 VP if you control the objective, but you must perform an action to actually terraform it, right? The unit that's performing the action must survive until the end of your opponent's next turn to complete terraforming for +2 VP. So again, an enemy unit has to actually, your unit must actually survive. So you can't simply run over there with Storm Boys, say, I'm going to terraform this because some bolters are going to blow your Storm Boys away. And then you're like, oh, dang. There's another time where you can see something like a Big Mech and Mega Armor being able to do this. Another thing that you can see if you read the card is that it can be done multiple times on multiple different objectives. Multiple different objectives. So you can't do 2 different units and trying to terraform one objective. But if you do tend to earn 2 or 3 of those mid-table objectives, you can attempt to terraform them, force the enemy's hand into trying to delete you off of some of these terraforming objectives. And once they're terraformed, they're yours and you continue to score. So I actually really do like this one. For the case that it's a bit unorthodox, yet it's not easy to do. It's not easy to do. It hurts elite armies and it hurts kind of soft armies too, hordy kind of MSU armies. Both of them can feel the challenges of performing terraform to their optimal potential for that 2 points. But the fact that you still get 4 is kind of nice because you're not too buried in weak primary scoring. And then we have Unexploded Ordnance. This is the new Servo Skull, still kind of silly. Pressure, go, go, go. What I really want to see, guys, is once we see the point changes, are commandos and is bully boys really going to change, right? What I mean by our mandos going to change is even if they aren't changed in points, where they become more prevalent and more appealing in something like a bully boys army where you can give them that turn WAAAGH, put 20, 30 on the line, throw and put pressure up forward for some of these primary objectives, and then follow up with units of boys and trucks. There's a whole bunch of things we can look at in this once we actually get to see the point adjustments, because I simply don't think that you can max out Mega Knobs, and I simply think that Green Tide is going to have a harder time in some of these primary missions when they're trying to score their secondaries as well on top of that. But we'll look at that when we go with mission rules takeaway. But before I do that, I want to give a shout out to Henrita for... I already said that wrong. I always said that, buddy. Sorry. For 20 euros, guess what? Whoa! That's what I'm talking about, boy. Sorry to anybody that I wad up in your ear. Love you. Sorry about that. But thank you very much. I appreciate the support. It means a lot. It helps us keep improving and getting better, and also stay motivated to know that we're doing something right there, right? Be sure to check out our Discord and be a part of the Great WAAAGH you get. So thank you very much. And hopefully you guys get some memberships you can get put in that raffle. So as we talk about the mission rule takeaways, so we were introduced to new mission rules, and I want to talk about how these can impact your WAAAGH in the way that you can really think about these as an orc player. So adapt or die. You can replace secondary missions. If tactical, you draw another card twice per battle and you reshuffle it back into that. Will this be used competitively, right? This is one of those things that it was similar for tactical before. We really have to see if this is going to be something that they're going to use. It makes scoring secondaries much easier, which, as we can see, scoring primary is going to be more important in the future. Scoring secondaries as a whole is harder for the redundance of how many secondary actions we're going to have to do. We'll talk about that in the next slide. And this is something that we have to take in consideration. If it's real and it's viable and it's a thing that you can do, then it's going to hurt Green Tide directly. You're going to be able to choose to say, hey, I'm going to call the Horde and assassinate. It's going to hurt Dread Mob, where you're going to say, hey, I'm going to straight up bring it down, and whatever else they may want to be doing as a secondary. So this is one of those things that does suck, does hurt. If it's for tactical and it's early game and the person's looking for call the Horde, they can kind of fish for it, right? They can now burn a secondary card because they can do that that stratagem twice now. I'm sorry, unlimited now, and then they can draw an additional card on top of that. That means they're going to be looking for call the Horde, as this doesn't seem to have a cap on what it scores, and bring it down simply doesn't seem to have a cap either on the turn that you draw it. So even though we know tactical cards are diminished in their point scoring value, on these two specific cards, which are very important to our specific archetypes of Green Tide and Dread Mob, you must understand that if the adapt or die becomes relevant in your tournaments and you see it on your tournament pack, know that a smart player is going to go, hey, I'm going to really fish for this adapter. I'm going to fish for call the Horde and bring it down against you, buddy, because I can score 15 points here real easily. So just know that's interesting for us as orcs. I really want to know, I've been racking my brain, how much is Green Tide and Dread Mob going to be affected? These are the two detachments that I'm running the most, and I really don't want to see orcs kind of corralled into playing Bully Boy simply, even if it's a different version. Then we have inspiring leadership. Not really impactful, not really huge, but where it does come into play, in my opinion, is Gaz. Because you do have to be with a 9, and he has to be visible, meaning that you have to see his big boy booty, and you have to be within range of his big boy booty. So the biggest warlord we have, as it has to be the warlord, is Gaz. Therefore, if you play him, this comes into play. You're playing Warhorde, you're playing Bully Boys, you're playing something with he's included. There you go. You'll appreciate it. Not a huge deal. I just think Gaz is the only one that's really going to benefit the most from this. Then you have prepared positions. Battle line units can go to ground or heroic for 0 CP. Most other armies think that's not impactful. Orcs, we kind of do. A lot of armies can already get cover because they're really small 5-man units, whatever it may be. There's a bunch of times where sometimes your boy's stringing out a little booty, little 10-man unit. They're still sticking out in the open, and the other 10 are actually in the deployment zone. You're trying to stage. They're not necessarily fast. You disembark from a transport. Giving them the ability to go to ground might help with the light cover, but it also giving them a 6-up invuln. I think people forget that go to ground gives you a 6-up invuln, and being able to heroic for free is really nice. So the units that appeal to me for this are 10-man units of boys with a war boss, or even a 20-man unit of mob, right? A 20-unit mob trying to take over the table, being able to kind of overlapping support each other with free heroic is beautiful. On top of the fact that you can use go to ground and decide, hey, maybe something like a Beast Snag a Boy and Beast Boss unit will now have a built-up 6-up invuln on top of their 6-up Feel No Pain on something outside of the Bully Boys where they only have an invuln for 1 turn. You can feel a little bit better in your Hunt or your Warhorde, and you have these Snagga Boys, you can give them a 6-up invuln, right? Or that heroic. So other armies don't see this as too important. For orcs, we have leaders that are quite potent, and we have terrible armor saves and no real invuln. So the fact that you can get them for free does become somewhat important. Just keep it in the back of your head. Not game-changing, but it could be feel good. Then you have swift actions. Battle line units can advance, fall back, and are still eligible to do actions. We like that. We really love that. We're going to miss that out on our assault weapons. This is one of those things where I think we're going to be teching more into Storm Boys and trucks again, and therefore your battle line units will be included in your trucks, and maybe they can jump out even if they don't have a leader and perform some actions as the truck runs away and prepares the stage to do actions on another turn or tag an objective. None of our battle lines are too fast. It's not like a Harley Quinn unit, or an Eldar unit, so Not my favorite, even for battle line included for orcs, but it is what it is. Raised battle lines. 1 VP banner if a unit is if a banner is raised by a battle line unit. I like that it can be done multiple times and multiple objectives. Sorry, it can be done multiple objectives, not multiple times. You just do it once for that objective. But because we're orcs and we have battle lines kind of swarming the field as it is, and a lot of the archetypes, including bully boys, you see boys already on the field. Of course, you know that your dread mob can be filled up with grot if you decide to go grot heavy. Therefore, raising the banner, giving yourself a couple more points is nice. Don't be too zealous on it. And we always have to control our rate of attrition as orc players, right? Like I like to say, you must be willing to completely lose your army in the game that you play, but you cannot lose it too early, right? There's totally fine if you only have 3 models at the end of the game, like 3 units at the end of the game. But it's very important that you control that rate of attrition. Therefore, don't overextend yourself for raised banners. Not too many points. Then we have rapid escalation. Battle line units coming from reserves turn 1. Now, other armies see this and they're like, yeah, I got infiltrators, I got scouts, I got all this other things. I think this is a great way to pressure and optimize some shenanigans with Green Tide and Bully Boys. Now, I don't think it's game shifting yet. We have to see points, but this is just something that's coming in the back of my head. If for some reason commandos come down or that we really do get carved from our mega knobs, this is the fact that you're going to have to go, hey, I might have to pressure you with multiple commandos, Zagra. I'm going to have to jump up with Weird Boy 20-man unit, and I'm going to bring in a 20-man brick of battle line boys off that table. This can even function in a Bully Boys detachment, like I said. So you can front load Zog, Mandos, jump up a 20-man boys unit, jump up another 20, have the other 20-man units come up from reserves, and then you have the mega knobs and the knobs later coming in for the rest of the turn for the second WAAAGH. So other armies see this as, I don't like it. I see it as orcs love the pressure. We want to pressure. Now with the new way that secondaries are scored and mission primaries are scored, we want to possibly bully people even more early game off primary and try to get them to try to do a secret mission and possibly fail, or just fall back too much on primary, lack positioning for secondary, and having the units to perform the secondaries that are actually eligible to do them. Currently, the bunch of different units can perform secondaries when they're in combat and they're tagged and they're advancing and assaulting. In this case, if we just start tagging things, which is something 20-man boy units are really, really good at doing, that will stop them from scoring. Therefore, rapid escalation does find its place in the orcs. Then we have smoke and mirrors. Redeploy reserve regardless of how many units you already have in reserves. We don't have this anywhere else in the Orc Codex, so we actually kind of like to see this. Reserves is always powerful, is the note that I put on here. It's always important that you have a unit in reserve so you can come back with a rapid ingress. I like killer cans for this reason and such. It also allows you to correct mistakes that you made in your deployment. Let's say you're chipping out and the enemy, you see the enemy kind of line up his anti-tank gladiator lancer on your truck and you're like, no! You just pick them up like, my bad, my bad, let me come over here later. So it will help you as a newer player for that reason, the smoke and mirrors. But the one unit that it kind of brought to my mind is mech guns. I mean, we know the mech guns are slow as dirt. We know that they're not necessarily durable. They do have a little bit of potency between their smasher guns and their tractor cannons and their bubble chuckers. But in this case, for smoke and mirrors, you're running Dread Mob. You can take that mech gun unit, stage it somewhere, enemies line up on it, and you're like, just kidding, bro. I'm going for Angron. And with your tractor cannon. So not huge thing, not magnificent for orcs to so many degrees, as you simply want to ingress one army, so one unit, and then we also already have our jumps. So it's all right, but I like it, but just that's how I can kind of see it being used. And then stalwart. So we have battle line units can perform actions and shoot while within engagement range. So we don't really care to shoot with our battle line units. Maybe your grots, I don't know, just kidding. But the thing that while we're engagement and actually able to do this is one of those missions that if you're going to an event and you read on your RTT mission that you're doing mission 2 and it has stalwart, or you're doing a GT level event and you have stalwart and swift action, you can consider more boys for that reason on this list. But that's something that it's nice for us, not super impactful in the game, but is interesting. And before we talked about fixed or tactical for the wall, let me get a shout out to Zek Shook for 5 WAAAGH Tactic gifted memberships. Whoa! Next year I didn't do it. We're doing our 3K raffle. We're raffling off 2 combat patrols, so be sure to grab in those. We always like to do our raffles. We give away merch, we give away models, we give away so many different things. We love to do that for the community, and you really support that with Zach Shuck. And any of you get that. Of course, get badged up, join the Great WAAAGH, become runts and then squigs and then boys and death dreads. The channel's finally been around almost for a year now. We're going to start seeing the next tier of some of you gets in there. Anybody that's death dread, you might become a bigger lad soon. So I love to see that. Very exciting. Thank you, Zach Shuck. And of course, I'm going to get to all the comments after this. I have a closing thoughts section and things I want to discuss. So throw it at me, put it in the chat. I'm going to see it. And it might be very interesting for the rewatch gang that gets to come back and see your questions, right? So fixed or tactical for my wall. Now, I'm just going to say it. I'm not giving you a direct prescription yet, but these are going to some food for thought that we're going to talk about and bring to mind for the orcs particularly, right? So orcs are notoriously known for being good at both, but we have bully boys, lack activations. If you've ever seen the bully boys list that we've been showing here, they simply don't bring a lot of chaff. They hope storm boys do everything and trucks do everything for them. As we see with our secondary missions, and we'll talk about other points here, we have the primary mission asking you to do actions, and we have secondary missions asking you to do actions, and some of them are asking you to do multiple. Then we have Green Tide, now lacks the ability to do actions in combat. Every time I played my Green Tide, the fact that the boys had pistols and could do combat while in action made the difference in the game for scoring secondaries. How much will this change going forward? I don't know yet. I have to actually see the points on what goes up, what gets hurt. Is this now expensive? Do I even have leaders? Is Green Tide going to be torn apart because it's been bullying? We don't know. But I know its scoring potential usually comes from its pistol potential. I do know you can run tacticals in this, but we have to see how everything kind of unravels, because something like bikers lost all their scoring capability. The fact that they don't assault anymore, even though they still move 12, they're simply going to get in the way of your trucks, of your staging units. You don't really like to see that. Therefore, bikers lost a lot of their scoring capability, which is simply all they were used for the most part. We all know and love the Death Killer Wardstrike with the 4-up Feel No Pain and Warhorde. Now he's not scoring for you, and that's really what he was doing, because he only has 4 attacks with his power claws. That's disrespectful, and it's just unimpressive. And then last but not least, Rip for Cult of Speed. Now, we all know that I'm a Cult of Speed lover. I have a bunch of buggies painted beautifully. I have max bikers all painted up, built beautifully. Simply, Cult of Speed is just getting torn apart slowly. It's going to need kind of a rewriting or real big reworking on the data sheets for buggies for it to really be impactful. But the second point, but primary missions will also now require actions as well as your secondary missions. So like I said prior, guys, we really have to see what's going to be interesting. I do think this is going to call for more trucks. Don't be surprised if you see 3x3 units of Storm Boys making a comeback. Then we see tactical secondary score less, yet new orders allow you to cycle through more cards and score 2 each turn. What do I mean by that? I mean that the fact that you're going to be able to fish for, which means to look and kind of hope to get tactical cards that you need circumstantially when you need them, means that you're going to be able to burn them and grab another one. Also, as an orc player, you understand that, hey, my Grauts can simply give me more CP, so I'm not really at a detriment to burn these and try to get more. So we personally have an advantage in tactical for that reason, that we can just try to load them up turn 1, turn 2, turn 3, and turn 4, and they're running out of steam, right? As we run out of steam, we can fish for more of these tactical secondaries. So that's how new orders helps us as orc players. Grauts give us a CP. We want to run ahead on the scoreboard early, so that's going to be important. And then we have some secondaries who call multiple units to perform secondaries as well. Will your raw wall run out of steam? What I mean by that is, like I said earlier, bully boys are simply usually running out of activations, running out of units to perform their secondaries. They kind of want to just run up and kill you. If they happen to bounce, if the enemy unit does have enough screening and their own consistency to score secondaries, or simply just out primary you as a bully boys unit, will you run out of steam too early? Then we have must-see points in new archetypes to see viability to scoring a killy fixed secondary, right? We do know that there are some secondary fixed missions that you can score and kind of be somewhat uninteractive, but because you are so limited to when you can actually perform actions, because you can't do it in combat anymore, and your green tides are going to be filling up the whole table, we really have to see what the rest of the meta looks like when they get their point changes, if vehicles will still become prevalent, if they'll be important, and can we kind of rely on that to take to fixed. Now, I think in some matchups, like we'll say Titan Knights, right? Of course, I could say I'm going to get a fixed. But all in all, I am slightly favoring the fact that we're going to have to figure out how to get these secondaries going and tactically. We must see the mission rules that are included in tournament mission packs, right? At a GT or an RTT, the TOs will choose, for the most part, because you're not randomly rolling it, hey, am I going to have Stalwart? Am I going to have Adapt or Die? What of these rules are actually being incorporated? Therefore, we will know how much battle line and how much we can rely on them to score on secondaries, or if we're going to have designated scoring units. Am I going to play Dread Mob and just swarm the table with Grots and just fill up and say, well, these guys are in a reactive move so that you can't tag them, so that they can actually perform an action next turn? Am I going to have Zogrot so he can position and be hidden? Am I going to have Snickrot over here? Am I going to have Commandos staged up in the middle? There's a bunch of things that Dix can pull out that we have to kind of see what missions are included for that if we want to score our tactical secondaries. Unless Mega Knobs just don't get hit enough and people just bully and try to just kill everything, right? I like to talk about how we're going to score everything. Of course, I'm very aware that some people just want to kill everything. You guys just keep doing that. Then we have must see if terrain layouts change as well. I've heard secret whispers here and there that they're going to come out new mission layouts. We know that the deployment zones have changed. Therefore, I'm inclined to believe the terrain layouts might change too. The deployment zones are getting closer, so I really like to see that. And it feels really good for us, which means our trucks with their staging potential feels even better. Will we have battle wagons around? Will Bully Boys just be the obvious go-to unit detachment for that reason now? Or will Warhorde kind of come back, right? So we have my closing thoughts and takeaways. So I'll kind of elaborate and extrapolate on some of these, and then I'll interact with chat so you guys can let me know your final thoughts or if I missed anything real quick. Remember, this is just us getting our toe stuck in, taking some ideas, getting our flows going and our blood juices flowing. Make sure that we're conserving our WAAAGH energy for once we actually get the points. So how does this look for the WAAAGH? So for the Great WAAAGH as a whole, for the Ork community as a whole, I welcome these, as I think it's going to hurt those other elite armies that simply just want to kill you and stand still and be gunline armies. They're not really going to be able to do that anymore. Tau is going to be really annoying. Yet at the same time, armies that are going to be able to jump corners could be kind of difficult, right? And that goes into the next point. Who will be the new predators and armies that are able to score secret missions against us? When we talk about armies that can score secret missions against us, the few armies that come to mind are Necrons, Grey Knights, Eldari. And we simply have a 50-50 win rate into Necrons and Grey Knights at the moment. Eldar we do have some kind of advantage against, but those kind of factions, something like this, where they can take secret missions, they can concede the primary to us to a certain extent, play the corners of the table, kill us selectively as they can, jump to your backfield, shoot away your screens with one of their Dread Knights, then bring their Strike Marines back and get into your deployment zone with one of their battle line units or even their Warlord, means that they have the potential to very much score a secret mission against you. So new predators for that reason. Next point is, where does Dread Mob fit into all this? I really want Dread Mob to become a little bit more reliable and more powerful. Therefore, I'm hoping that maybe some units either come down or that the meta changes into heavy infantry, and that means our Luda bombs become more interesting, our grot screens and reactive move become a little bit more useful, and our vehicles don't die so quickly. We do know Bring It Down doesn't hurt as much nearly anymore, so 6-man units of Killicans are being more appealing to me. Will battle line be impactful? That goes back to, depends if TO's included into the mission rules, right? When they're going to be rolling these, they're not going to roll them out randomly in front of you. They're going to go in their head and say, how do I want to affect this mission? TOs are pretty good about that. So at the moment, people are not too high on battle line. Us Ork players, we have to know that our battle line's actually good. Therefore, it's not really hard for us to adjust and change into. We're already kind of using them. Will truck spam be real? Everybody knows the beginning of the index running 6 trucks with boys in it was the way to go. Are we going to go back to that? Because trucks are going to be needed for their optimal moving, their staging, and then their scoring after. Does this hurt Green Tide too much? Like I said, how's Green Tide going to score its secondary points now? If it simply can't do it in actions, are we going to see a couple big bricks and then a bunch of 10-man units kind of sprinkled out throughout there, right? How will Bully Boys adjust to the fact that they have to do mass actions? If they don't get enough point increases, will they simply just kill everything? Or will they actually try to adjust by bringing more boys, maybe mobs of boys, or just going, hey, I'm going to bring commandos, a boy unit to jump at you, and then just run at your face, and then stage and run at you my next turn with my Neganobs and pick you up off the table. And then last but not least, is there a War Horde return? Meaning that because the deployment zones have now gotten slightly closer together, and War Horde does give you more ability to move with Follow Me Lads, Here We Go for advance and charge buffs, is there a chance that people are going to say, well, I need a bunch of little bit more skirmishing units that are going to score? That means my units are smaller. I need to hit a little bit harder, and I need to move a little bit faster with infantry type units. Therefore, does War Horde become a little bit more interesting again? I did just throw that out there for hopes of it, because, you know, War Horde is still beloved by us, but that's where I'm at on this. So those are some of my closing thoughts and takeaways. Now I'll take a second to look at chat. So get what you guys got to stay in here. And we see Stephen Goodrich with that picture is awesome. I appreciate it. And we have Blake Kilton trying to get my 100 boys painted for the upcoming GTs. Let the grind continue. It feels really good to play 200 points. If your back can take it, mock it. Of course, have really good deployment practice and getting all your models up and off the table. Don't want to time out. When I took them to RTTs and played them in general, missions at certain matchups, like against Space Wolf Jail, your time management becomes a huge factor. In the morning, he's headed to Dallas GT, taking the Green Tide. Let's go, Stephen Goodridge. That's what I'm talking about. Yeah, with the 120 boys. Whoa, I love that, buddy. I love that. And then we have Wicked Joe ready for the Lone Star Open. Okay, so you guys are paying attention. We have to see what's going on with this. This is very important for us. Greetings to all you gets. And then we have Aaron asking for 300 day of 347 of asking for Follow Me Lads 2 inches matter. I don't know if that's real, because I don't even know if the channel's been alive for 347 days. So maybe. Then we have will Ludas be good for Linchpin? Hypothetically, it's a valid question, but the reason I'm hesitant is because I don't know if you're playing on terrain where you're going to put them at second floor, get plunging fire, actually be able to see the terrain I play on. The Ludas don't really get staging position for that. So they could be if you're going to leave them on your home objective and be able to see, but for the most part, your Orks are going to be the ones doing that and feel good about it. I really think Ludas coming in off the table edges will be good, and that's a good way to play them, or jumping out of trucks in looking at people that are on objectives. He considers it, and then we have Admiral No Beard. I considered adapt or die when I play speed mob. Being able to fix change secondary might be a lifesaver. Yeah, except for the fact that now we can't use our assault weapons. I really don't like to see that. It is what it is. I'm glad that you're still trying to use Cult of Speed. And then Zach said, I still love Zod with the 20 grots to hold the center objectives to kick. Then for kicks, go to ground. Yeah, that's a good point too. Thanks for bringing that up. Grots getting go to ground is freaking hilarious, because you get a 6-up invuln. So you're getting the 6-up invuln, and that increase their durability. What I will say is, because you have Call the Horde now included as a tactical secondary, now you have to worry about Purge, Assassinate, Call the Horde, all of these different secondaries that Zod essentially gives up freely if the enemy really wants to score them on it. So I might disagree with you on Zod being the 20-man unit being that viable going forward. As like we said, we see a bunch of ways people can simply call the Horde by trying to. So I don't really want to give away even more secondaries for free. And I feel like Zod really does that when he's a 20-man unit. Then you have a bunch of walls. Appreciate you, Gets. He says, my Beck boys bring all walkers to the yard. Yeah, I feel you on that. I want to be running, because I'm getting my Dread Mob more ready to the highest potential. So I'm getting Mac Killer Cans ready, and hopefully I can get my hands on a bit more Ludas. But, I'm ready to go. I'm excited for them. And Jay Hughes said, I stayed in the War Horde. That's good. Yeah, everybody's really a fan of War Horde when they really look at the point, the passive buffs of sustain and the stratagems being awesome. Really good, useful enhancements as well. But I think Bully Boys right now just kind of does this thing a little bit more reliably, a little bit more directly. But War Horde's still where it's at, and I love Gaz and my War Horde. So closer deployments are going to be great for the speed. I love Admiral still. Admiral, shout out to you for still trying to be in love with the Cult of Speed mob. So he's happy that they're going to be closer to each other. Of course, the screens are going to be harder, but hey, he can wall turn one. because now I'm going to be closer. And he's sold on the Cult of Speed. So I'm glad some people are still sold on the Cult of Speed. I still do think they're going to take detrimental hits when it's actually played in practicality. I think Orks are going to feel good in Pariah Nexus for the most part, but we still have yet to see how all the point changes are going to hit us. Will the bully boys be smacked down? Will the other armies be able to score secret missions a little too easy against us? That's something we'll get with more time, more practice. All in all, I'm happy for Pariah Nexus kind of coming through. We did have a very small window that GW just released points. Therefore, I don't think their point changes will be too huge. I can see GW really just taking an approach of we'll let things kind of simmer and bake, hit a few things that are really toxic or really problematic. And then from there, or maybe they missed like last time's that they missed. And then, going forward, we can start working from there. So there's a bunch for us to learn. This is just the beginning. We'll definitely be getting points. I'll definitely be doing videos on all the detachments. And now that I know that I knew this book was coming, but now that it's here, we can actually have to retouch on all those topics, get you information out there to get the wall going nice and quickly and get that advantage and keep our win rate up, because that's what I like to see. Of course, don't forget to like and subscribe, and know that our raffle's coming up for 3K. So thank you to anybody who subscribes and helps us get there sooner than later. Be sure to join our Discord as it's free, and we'd love to see you in the Great WAAAGH. But there's always one thing to keep in mind: is don't cross our wall, because we knock your teeth out. Whoa!